So this is section 10.1, and we are looking at basically the finding the understanding the square root function more, as well as finding the domain of a square root function, as well as with the cubic too. So if we're looking at this particular table, which is a really nice table to look at on page 564, you see the setup as a function, f of x equal to the square root of x, where x is greater than 0, because you can't use negative numbers inside a square root. You can see the table that it generates, and then the type of graph that you get, and then they go through the domain of the square root. So in this case, because we're looking at the smallest value that can be put in a square root, that would be 0, and then where it stops, it doesn't stop, it's an infinity. So that's why the interval notation looks like this. So that's typically a setup, but we want to be able to use them and understand how they work. So let's evaluate some of the functions for square root. So again, my function is f of x equal to the square root of x, where x has to be equal or greater than 0. Okay, so if I'm given a function with a square root like the square root of 2x minus 1, and they want me to put f of 1 in, and as well as f of 2. So I'll put those in individually. So that's 2 times 1 minus 1. Okay. And so we have to multiply it first, and then we'll subtract, and then take the square root. So 2 times 1 is 2 minus the 1. And so then we get the 2 minus 1, which is 1. And so the square root of 1, it would just be 1. Okay. If we do it for, let's do f of negative 2. So I'll put that in. So that's 2 times negative 2 minus 1. And so 2 times negative 2 is your negative 4. And then the square root of negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. And so we cannot have a negative inside the square root. So this tells us that we have to state that this is not a real solution. And I believe in the homework and quizzes you'll get a statement choice like this. So anytime you see a negative number inside a square root at the final number, you have to state this. That's not a real solution. It's not a real number. Okay? And so that's the basics for these two right here. So if we were to look at a typical word problem, so let's go back to the book, and we'll go to this one. It says calculating hang time. If a football is kicked x feet high, then the time t in seconds that the ball is in the air is given by this function. So they're going to give you the equation of 1/2 times the square root of x. Now you have to find the hang time if the ball is kicked 50 feet into the air, and does the hang time double if the ball is kicked 100 feet into the air. So let's go back to the board. So they gave me important information. So the important list. Okay. They gave me the equation. They said t of x is equal to 1/2 square root of x. They told me what x was. X is in feet, and it's how high, so it's in feet. And then they told me t of x. T of x is in seconds, Okay, it's in seconds. Alright, that the ball is in the air. Okay, so the question they wanted to know is find the hang time. Okay, find the hang time if the ball is kicked 50 feet into the air. So that goes in for x. So I will go t of x equal to 1/2 times the square root of 50. Okay? And so square root of 50 is not a perfect number, so we could, if we wanted to, we could set it up where we're simplifying the square root. So square root of 50 is 5 times 2 times 5. And so we do have two 5s, so this 5 and this 5 combine to come out. So we have 1/2 times 5 in the square root of 2. We don't have a pair. So we could have it as 1/2 times 5 is 2.5 square root of 2. Or we could write it as 5/2 square root of 2. So this is an exact answer. If we did it on the calculator, let's try that. Oops, right here. So let's do the square root of 50. Okay, and so it's 7.07. And then we go ahead and we divide by 2. So we get 3.5, and if they said in the homework to round to the nearest tenth, it would just be 3.5. So this would be 3.5, and so is it in seconds? So this would be in seconds. It's seconds. And so sometimes in the book or on the homework, they want exact answers. And so this would be more accurate to say 5/2, or we could also write it another way, 5 square root of 2 over 2 seconds. So any one of these three would probably be acceptable unless they decided they don't want decimals. You would have to write it like one of these ways, because this is really over 1, so that's why I was able to do that. So unless they say rounding, then you would probably do this. But if they don't say rounding, you have to leave the radical sign in the problem, because you can't simplify it to get rid of it. So that's kind of important to see there. The last thing is we'll do in the next video, which is finding the domain of these radicals.